Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a highly textured scene that I just did using one color, black, and one stamp, which is the Pines and Rocks stamp. But what this is really about is it's about the paper. In this case, it's a kind of an iridescent paper. The line is called Stardream, which you might be familiar with it if you're into papers. There's an iridescent kind of shimmer to it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's mica in the pulp or if it's on the surface or what. I have a feeling it's in the pulp itself because, the back of it's, nice and shimmery as well. And I don't think they just applied it to the front and back. It's probably in the paper itself. But just streaking in some colors, leaving some areas light. Okay, that's like the technique that's in most of these scenes, but this is done on a different, surface. And the star of the show is really all that texture in there over the top of the imagery and background, and that is called Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. Okay? I don't know. This is like a 20-year-old bottle, so I don't know if they have a new label on it or what, but if it's called that, it certainly is it. Probably has a more modern label to it, but what that is it's this paint. It's a opaque watercolor, and it allows you to, in this case, I take a old toothbrush and I just kind of splatter that ink into the scene, right over the tops of the imagery. And then I started adding a little bit of the white gel pen marks in here, but I was getting a little bit of clogging because that white paint is it's almost like correctional fluid. So it's kind of chalky, so it was clogging my pen a little bit. So all I did was I just switched off to a, little brush, and I just applied a lot of the snowy types of white texture to the trees. Okay, that's what all that is in there, besides some of the splatter painting. Just applied with this brush like so. Okay, actually this is really dry on here, but anyways, it makes for a really quick card, and I feel a really fun technique to work in. And it's kind of an interesting process as far as the the splattering and the adding those marks to the trees in the form of like snow on the branches, because it's kind of, this paper is sealed off a little bit, so when I lay it down there, it's kind of like sitting on the surface for a little bit, and I like how it just kind of dries on there eventually, because it's like putting something on a super polished car or something like that. It beads or something like that. So that's what's kind of happening in these trees. But as far as I'm concerned, that helps it because it looks a little bit more natural. Okay, and believe me, I'm no painter, so you know, it's really it's the surface that's doing it for me. I'm just kind of applying it here and there in these little scumbling kind of marks, or even like a dot, and it just kind of blends in just fine, so I don't have to do anything. But anyways, if you watch this video, I hope you have a good time. This scene right here could probably be really appropriate for like a wintertime scene or whatnot. And I did this one on the heels of the Aurora Borealis scene that I did last night, because the marks, in terms of applying the black on the Stardream paper in the background, is a real similar motion, okay, in terms of how I used it. But in this case, it's really fast because I'm just using one color. So anyways, thanks for tuning in, and hope you like the scene and technique. Okay, we're going to do something a little bit different in this video. As far as the surface that we're working on, this is a paper called Stardream, and it has this kind of iridescent kind of shimmer to it. I'm not sure what's in this paper as far as the the ingredient that makes it such. I don't know, maybe some mica or something like that. But It's always been one of my favorite types of papers. I love those kind of shimmery iridescent papers that are out there on the market. And I did this scene years and years ago, and I liked what I saw in terms of the way that this paper kind of accepted dye-based ink. And I'm just going with a monochromatic background on here, in the form of just black dye-based ink, okay? But I like the way that this paper kind of accepted and I guess kind of I wouldn't say resisted the ink, but it just, I don't know, there's this kind of mellow way that this paper kind of allows you to kind of spread this ink around, and it seemed really conducive to the type of scene that I was thinking about doing. Okay, now this scene is going to be this kind of wispy, wintry looking scene. Could be appropriate for maybe a Christmas card or something like that, or, you know, winter card. One of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be applying this ink, as you can see, but I'm going to also leave some of the pure, you know, the Stardream surface just as is, okay? So we get these kind of wispy cloud type of effects, and I'm doing this one, I thought I did this on a video before, but I couldn't find it if I did, so if I did, I don't know, here's a second version of it or something, but I'm doing this because the last video that I did last night, gosh, it feels like a week ago that I did that one, on the Aurora Borealis curtains image, I used a lot of this type of motion, this wispy type of motion, you know. This is the motion that I'm using right here. You can see there's kind of a pendulum type of movement to this, okay? Now when I go to the other side, flipping this around, so I'm doing this, okay? And see how I'm kind of staying in one area? I'm not trying to get this whole side done. I'm just working on this one kind of streak right now. But what this is doing is it's kind of creating this wave type of thing, because this is the way my hand goes this way, and this is the way my hand goes this way, okay? I'm not trying to do it like this, okay? Maybe you could, but I think that would wear on the tip, on this foam tip, a little bit too much too. And I think your hand and arm would get tired. I always try to go, you know, with my, whatever I'm doing in stamping, or whatever, in terms of a repetitive movement, you really want to keep things nice and ergonomic. So, see, this is the way my hands naturally go, right? And this is the way my fingers would go, okay? So there's no pressure being whatever. There's no pressure in my wrist, my elbow, or my shoulder at all, okay? So just, you know, it's move your paper around, you know, it's just simple enough. Even if you're working on a scene, you don't have to have it vertical at all times. This isn't like a painting where we're working on a canvas and, you know, we're painting around and the canvas is going to be stationary, all right? These cards and these scenes that we're doing are, you know, they're small, so just kind of move them around and get them into a position that would be most conducive to kind of a natural motion or stroke or whatever you're doing. That goes for making your impressions or anything like this, okay? If you're just doing a couple swipes, that's not a big deal to leave your paper, but you know, when I'm doing something like this, I mean, just even on this card, by the way, this is 4 inches by 8.5 inches, you know, I'm doing this quite a bit. And I'm using very light pressure, not trying to press into this at all, you know. I'm just trying to achieve the darker tones, just with more repetitive swipes, okay? But after you do this, you know, who knows, after a couple minutes, maybe you've done it, you know, a couple hundred times, a couple hundred swipes, and you know, this video is 5 minutes long at this point in time. The scene is done, but, you know, You want to go easy on your body. And I think the end result looks much more graceful as a result too. Okay, so we have our background here. We have these kind of wispy, kind of atmospheric formations. This will end up being our sky. All right, now let's see. I tell you what, I'm going to add a little bit more ink to my pad because I want these impressions now to be fairly dark in the form of this tree stamp. You know what? I think I want to go even darker. Okay, you can see how kind of light in some ways this paper is. And I've used a lot of that black ink on there, okay? But it looks more gray. This is black next to it. I think I'm going to go with that VersaFine again. All right. The VersaFine is a, it says instant dry pigment ink. Well, it wasn't instant dry on my glossy cardstock, but I think on the Stardream, it'll set up faster than it did on glossy cardstock. If you watched that video, that was from a few lessons ago. Beautiful, beautiful, dark black, pure black, detailed impressions. So that's why I really like that ink. All right, now on this one, I have a feeling that it's not going to stamp out quite as dark as it would, you know, on a blank piece of paper or something of that sort. Because, again, this paper is a little bit coated. Now I've laid down a ton of ink over the top of this. Let's see, which way looks up and which way looks down. That could be my sky, and that could be kind of the horizon, or that could be higher up, and this could be the horizon. I'm not quite sure. Let's go this way. You can even have it like this, and that kind of looks more, I don't know, wispy aurora borealis kind of formations or something. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, I'm just going to get as dark an impression as I can. I have a feeling, though, like I said, it won't look, you know, absolutely pitch black dark. And if some of it lifts, now I could let that paper dry a little bit or heat set it or something like that, but I'm not going to really bother with that for right now. Because I have other textures that I'm going to put right over the top of this in the form of this bleed-proof white. But until I get to that, let's get these impressions laid down. I'm holding this down longer. I'm not necessarily needing to press harder. I'm just giving it good pressure overall, okay? And sometimes I let it set for a little bit, you know, a few seconds. Now if I lift this up, like I said, and it doesn't leave as stark, dark a black impression, that'll be fine. Okay. Alright. That is about like so. See, it's a little bit wet. It was kind of wet into it. You can see where it kind of puddled a little bit. But that will do. I have a feeling that maybe if I did it in the dye-based ink, I don't know if it would have came out quite as dark. It probably would have came out like half as dark as that one. Alright, let's go for another one. Let's go for this second impression. Maybe over here, going off the page maybe, or something like that. So it's like right here. Not doing any of the rocks. Okay. Decent pressure. Okay. Now, there's a big open area in there. That'd be like great for like an invitation or something like that. You put some text in there, or a quote or something like that. But I'm going to use some extra impressions. Let's see, which way will I go? Let's go right here with it. Let's see, maybe lower, like this. Kind of rule of thirds, maybe I'll put 2 of them on one side, 1 of them on this side. Let's see what it looks like though. Okay. That looks okay to me as far as a composition goes. And I think... Alright. One more. I was looking right here. I want a little bit more of a graceful transition, kind of going down, but I'll just use this tip of this one, maybe a little bit of this one. One of the interesting things to me on this impression is after I stamp it, it doesn't look very dark. I don't know if you can see the difference between that one and that one. But as this sits here, it seems to get darker to me, you know? For some reason, I don't know if it's soaking into the paper or what, or just the kind of in the nature of that pigment ink on there. But I don't know, that usually doesn't happen. If anything, something usually, when it dries, it usually seems to get lighter, so I don't know, that's what seems to be happening there. Okay, let me test out this. Yeah, it's really wet, see that? See my finger? Alright, so that being said, I better watch out for that. I got a little fingerprint up there. Let's see. Let me blend that out. I need something to hold this card down with. All right. Now, when I start adding this kind of dye-based, this is the dye-based ink now that I'm kind of blending that little fingerprint out with. When it dries, it does look lighter, but the pigment, like I said, almost seems to be getting darker as it sets up. Okay, let's see if this will get darker though, just adding on another layer in the corners. Let's do that, let's tap. Tapping kind of builds up a little bit of ink, kind of in little beads. You know, sometimes if you're working on certain surfaces, like glossy, and if you're kind of swiping in some color after you've laid down quite a bit of ink, you're kind of like almost like swiping color off the page if the ink in that area is wet. So you kind of have to build it up. So microscopically, what it probably looks like is the building up of these little beads of ink on there. Okay, so we have our background, we have our foreground. I'm not going to do like a midground or something like that in there, you know, but you could. Could be a cabin or something like that in the background. This is supposed to look like a wintry looking scene. Could be, you know, clouds or northern lights or anything like that. But let's see, let's create a little bit of a protective barrier around here. I'm going to start adding in some extra texture and contrast and little effects with this Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white in a splatter painting technique. Alright, so I'm spreading all this paper out like this, Because it does tend to get... You can control it to an extent, but I'm going to be careful about that. Okay, now this is Dr. Martin's. I don't remember the last time I used it, but it, you know, it dries a little bit, and all it takes is a little bit of water to bring it back into solution, okay? It's an opaque watercolor paint, and it's just a lot of fun to work with. I used it fairly recently, because I remember talking about it. But a lot of calligraphers use it to lettering with, and to do like reverse lettering, writing, you know, white on black or something like that sort, white on dark. Okay, now you want to get this into kind of the right consistency. Thinner than toothpaste. Trying to think of anything that would be like that thick. Maybe like syrup or something like that. Not a super thick syrup though. Maybe a little bit thinner. Store-bought, you know. Okay. That's about what I want right there. Okay, I don't know, you can't see it from an angle, but it's fairly thick. It doesn't have to be the perfect consistency either. There's plenty of wiggle room as far as the consistency of it. It is fairly, you know, opaque, though. I mean, that's the entire nature of that ink, so even if it's a little bit thinner or something like that, it will look pretty opaque, alright? As long as you get it a little mixed in. Alright, now here's my applicator. It's just a old toothbrush, okay? No specific firmness, you know, soft or firm or medium or anything like that. I don't know, maybe I could see, you know, if it was super, super soft, maybe it wouldn't have that, you know, that kind of spring to it. Or, I don't know, just get if you only have, like, electric toothbrushes, then use I don't know, go buy a cheap one at the store. Or, I don't know, I guess an electric toothbrush can work, too. Maybe not an Oral-B with that round head to it. But, anyway. Alright, kind of loading this up in here. And I don't want it too goopy, so I'm trying to load this up, you know, fairly evenly, but I don't want it to drip now, you know, when I'm going like that. So don't put so much in there where it's just, you're going to pull it out of this and it's just going to be dripping all over the place, okay? Alright, let's see. If my back... Maybe I shouldn't have thrown out that other paper that I was working on, but I want to see where this is going. So sometimes, you know, when you start splattering it, it's kind of hard to tell where it's going. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see if I can kind of direct it a little bit. Can you see that going on there? Here, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I'm trying to do this one-handed now that my this hand is occupied. Okay, let's try this again here. Alright. By the way, this is what I'm going for is kind of like this snow flurry look, okay? Ah! I got a gigantic... oh, it's leaking out of this thing right here. I'll mop that off. So watch out for big blobs. I guess I should look at that once in a while. I'm just putting it right over the trees too. If you want it more concentrated in a certain area, then do that. Okay. Besides that blob, you can see what that looks like there. Coming in from over in this direction. Take that. And I'll tell you something though. This technique sure is fun. Okay. All right, let's see what I can do about that big blob there. Oops, I got another little blob there. Okay, here's my my fix here. Just grab a paper towel like that on my hands, and let's see if I can just kind of sap it out of there. Absorb. Okay. Break it off. Go for a fresh tip. Soaking up again. Alright. Break that off. Soaking it up again. Okay. Now this is bleed proof white, so it is kind of opaque and a very thin, even in a thin application. Alright, so let's see if we can get that out of there a little bit. Alright, a little bit of repair work there. Let me see. I had a pen here somewhere. I'm looking for my Sharpie. Oh, I tell you what, let me see if this alcohol pen is working. Okay, I'm just going to go, this is an alcohol black pen, and I'm just going over my impressions a little bit here. Alright, a little bit obtrusive, but let's go back in now. I have my tip again. Let me see if there's some ink left on there, and I'll just, yeah, or watercolor paint. I'll just go right over the top of that. Don't drop a big blob on me again though. There we go. And no harm done. I've just kind of obscured it with a bunch of paint splatter again. Okay, here we go. If you've seen my videos, you know I like texture. That is a lot of texture. That looks a little bit harsh there. Oops. Here we go. I know I'm getting my hand. Okay. That looks good to me. This paint on your hand comes right off. It washes right off. It comes off much, much easier than, say, you know, a dye-based paint. This stuff right here just washes right off very easily. Okay, so we have that going on. Let me get all this stuff out of the way. I have a blob of paint there, otherwise I'm going to get a lot more all over my hands. This paint, too, it dries pretty quick. It's real chalky. It has the feel of like correctional fluid, like a, you know, liquid paper type of thing. I don't know. Maybe it's the same type of thing. Maybe that's where that kind of thing came from. You know, as far as correctional things, I mean, it has to be kind of opaque. So that's, I don't know. Yeah, that's what kind of it feels like. All right, so we have this scene like that. But here's what I like to do. Okay. There wasn't very, you know, there was a little bit of control, you know, as far as the application of that splatter paint goes. But we have all these trees in here, and then we have white gel pens to work with, okay? What I like to do is go back into my, let me get a newer version of that. I like to go on my trees now and really add on quite a bit of this kind of snowy branch type of thing. What you'll find is when you start adding this into the scene, it feels like it clogs a little bit. I think it's because it's picking up, it's rolling in some of that paint into the ball thing, so just give it a little scribble. This one's a fairly thick Uniball Signo white pen, so it's pretty good as far as you know, not clogging or clogging less. Right. And I'm just kind of adding these little dots and little squiggles to the top surface of some of these trees, these branches, okay? I mean, you can probably take, you know, a paintbrush too, and go with some of that Dr. Martens. Okay, can you see that, what I'm doing there? You can see the difference between this tree and this tree. You know, it's just going on and doing these little marks like that. No. Alright. Let me use more dots, because it is, when I'm rolling it, it is kind of clogging a little bit. This is kind of where it all comes together for me, as far as a different look. I'm looking at my materials. Oh, here. Let me grab this here. And I see a small paintbrush like this, okay? It's really small. And Let me try something here. I don't have a really great tip on this. I don't know if it's narrow enough, but it's okay. I'll just go and add a little bit of these snowy effects here and there. Actually, this is working out pretty good. I don't have to declog, this pen by scribbling with it at all. Let me see if I can get in a little bit closer for you. There's so much texture in here. You don't have to be good with a brush. Like I certainly am not really great with like a soft media, like brushes and paintbrushes, hair paintbrushes. But if I can kind of, I don't know, this is almost like this technique like scumbling, they call it, I think, in painting. As long as I can kind of do that, I'm okay, So you see the difference between that one and these ones? Okay. Over here, I think we can use a little... See, this gets a little obscure for me. In terms of just some of the different branches and shapes, it looks a little cluttered, so going in there with, a little bit of extra texture can look pretty good. And there is definitely a degree of randomness to this, to my approach here, okay? Because I just cannot see where one branch is and the other one begins. There's so much texture in there, so I'm just kind of putting little dots here and there. Okay, little strokes in there. Okay. Kind of pulls out some of the trees and shapes from the background when you do this type of thing. I'm getting a little bolder, I think, the more I do this. I feel fine kind of adding somewhat of a larger stroke. Okay. But look at that. I don't know, that's really fun. Okay. Doing it over here. Let me turn it upside down because I can get over here easier. See, my hand naturally goes in that direction, or gets in there from that direction. There used to be this book, well, I'm sure it's still out there. I think it was Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And one of their things was to turn like a photograph upside down. Or no, right side up, but I think, or yeah, turn the photograph upside down like a portrait of yourself, and then you would draw that portrait upside down, just, you know, how that was. And they thought a lot of people's drawings came out a lot better because you weren't looking at, like, thinking of a nose and things like that. You were just seeing forms and shapes, you know, rather than thinking, okay, I'm drawing someone's eyeball right now or something like that. But they flipped the thing upside down. So I think the concept was like you're using a different part of your brain to do that. I always thought that was kind of interesting, and I heard about that before I went to college, and I always thought that would be kind of an interesting thing. And it turned out the author for that book taught at that college, but she didn't really teach in the art department. It was like a general ed class that people would take, and it didn't really count towards my general education requirements because I was in the art department, so I couldn't take that class for my general ed requirements, so I just never got around to taking it. Should have taken it just as a, you know, just for fun, but I was always just too busy with my required things. But anyway, scumbling on the right side of the brain. Alright, there is my snowy scene. And believe me, I think that looks pretty good, you know, as far as like snow goes. I added a lot of that paint on top of it. You know, you just kind of like this around here, and it, I don't know, it miraculously, you know, looks halfway decent, right? You know, even just putting like a little clump like that, you know, it just says that there's a, you know, large clump of snow on that branch. See, that's right here. I mean, look how random I'm doing that, you know? And that looks like, it's because it's all that, we have all that texture, I think, in the background with the, you know, the splatter painting. Okay. Alright, let's do that over here. I'm a little bit more bold now, I think, after a few minutes. You know, to put, you know, a big clump of snow on my branch. Huh. I feel like a painter. I'm a lousy painter. But over the course of, you know, for a half an hour, I too can be a painter. Alright. I guess that's enough. Is it? I don't know. Kind of keep wanting to go on more and more and more, you know, when you think, oh, okay, that looks okay, I guess. Alright, so I'm catching a lot of glare here from the, you know, because this is iridescent paper, but that makes for kind of a fun technique and a quick scene, you know. Think about, you know, the minimal amount of really color application you're doing. We have the color kind of inherently in the paper itself. Stamping the trees out, you know. What's going to happen is on the Stardream paper, you're going to stamp something out. Now, there's a lot of surface area to this stamp right here. There's a lot of solids, right? And it doesn't give you a clean impression sometimes. Sometimes you pull it off and it's like you've left some areas that aren't quite so black, but in the end result, I mean, with all that texture that you're putting in here, I don't know, for me it really doesn't matter. I mean, I even did that big blob of white paint there and I scumble that out, but you know, I mean, you really don't see it too much. It's really obscured from all of the textures that are in here. And even with this paint here, what I was feeling is as I was adding kind of this paint in there, it's kind of sitting on the surface a little bit and moving or contracting a little bit even. So it kind of gave me a more, I don't know, I feel kind of a natural look to it, you know, in here. I mean, I didn't hit some of those branches, you know, because I couldn't see them. But in the end, it really didn't matter, I don't think, you know, as far as this end result and what it can end up looking like. So it's kind of hard to get this, you know, without that glare in there. So Stardream Paper, a one color scene. Oh, and this is one color, one stamp, a one color, one stamp scene. So it'd be interesting to put like some kind of quote stamp in there. If you do something like that, do it before you put all that splatter in there, because that paint is raised a little bit, you know, that watercolor paint, okay? So, if you choose to do this, I hope you have fun. Again, that's a Stardream paper. I don't remember the name of the color, but it's a light blue. But you can, if you have any kind of iridescent paper, maybe to give it a try and see how it comes out. And I don't know, you can come out with some really interesting looks, in my opinion. So, would make for kind of an interesting, you know, winter card. And imagine you can do this type of thing using different images in you know, different color scheme or whatever, and you'd get some different looks. But as far as that bleed-proof light type of thing goes, and splatter painting and whatnot, it's a fun little process to go through, and certainly easy and forgiving. Believe me, it's really forgiving. I mean, you know, going in there, for me, adding in all that white, I don't know, it looks really dimensional to me. So, foolproof, I don't know, but close to it, I would say. Anyway, I hope you had a good time watching the scene. Thanks for watching the videos, and if there's any feedback, if you want to see something done in other videos or in other videos to come, just always let me know and I'll try to get around to it.